Hello everyone, John AG here. Welcome back to my channel Aurex. If you haven't yet, subscribe to my channel. In this channel, you will find the real information, real market updates that everyone cannot tell you. So please subscribe to this channel, and I love you all of my subscribers for your support. And please watch this video till the very end because YouTube will not push my videos to more people. There's a secret history written not in ink, but in the sweat of billions of people. A history that explains exactly why you feel like you are running twice as fast just to stay in the same place. Have you ever wondered why your parents could afford a home, a car, and a vacation on a single middle-class income, while today, two incomes often barely cover the rent? It isn't a failure of your work ethic. It isn't a lack of ambition. It is the result of a silent, calculated, and colossal heist that took place over 5 decades ago, a shift so profound that it changed the very DNA of human civilization. We are currently living through the final, violent tremors of an experiment that began when the United States decided to disconnect the world from the bedrock of reality. Imagine for a moment that you are a farmer. You spend your year planting, watering, and harvesting. You trade your surplus wheat for a gold coin. That gold coin represents a full year of your life, your labor, your struggle, and your survival. It is honest. It is finite. It cannot be conjured into existence by a bureaucrat. Now imagine a king comes along and says, "That gold coin is too heavy, give it to me, and I will give you this piece of paper instead." You trust the king, you take the paper. But behind closed doors, the king realizes he can print millions of those papers without doing a single day of farming. He buys your wheat with paper that cost him nothing to create. Suddenly, your year of labor is worth a fraction of what it was, and the king is living in opulence while you are left holding a bill that loses value every single day. This is exactly what has happened to you, to me, and to every single person watching this video. To understand the sheer scale of this, we have to travel back to the aftermath of the Second World War. The world was decimated, the cities of Europe were rubble, and the economies of the East were in total collapse. In this vacuum of power, the United States stood as the undisputed victor, holding nearly 80% of the world's gold supply. At the Mount Washington Hotel in New Hampshire, the global elite gathered to forge the Bretton Woods Agreement. They looked at the chaos of the Great Depression and decided that the only way to ensure global peace was to anchor the entire world's financial system to the US dollar, and in turn, anchor the US dollar to gold. It was a beautiful, elegant, and, for a brief time, honest system. It meant that every dollar in circulation was backed by a physical, tangible, and unforgeable weight of gold stored in American vaults. The world agreed to this because they trusted the American promise. For 20 years, this provided the foundation for the greatest explosion of middle-class prosperity in human history. It created a world where saving was a virtue, where money was a store of value, and where your tomorrow was actually worth something. But human nature being what it is, the temptation was simply too great. By the 1960s, the American government was caught in a trap of its own making. They were fighting a brutal, expensive, and protracted war in Vietnam, while simultaneously trying to build an expansive trillion-dollar welfare state at home. They wanted both guns and butter. But in a gold-backed system, you cannot print money to pay for your appetites. You can only spend what you actually have. The politicians in Washington looked at their budget and realized they didn't have the gold to pay for their global ambitions. So they did the one thing that has destroyed every great empire in history. They debased the currency. They printed paper dollars that were not backed by gold. They inflated the money supply, essentially stealing purchasing power from every single person who held those dollars. The rest of the world, however, was not blind. By the mid-1960s, nations like France began to notice that the number of dollars flooding the global market vastly outweighed the amount of gold in the American treasury. The US was exporting its inflation, forcing other countries to subsidize the American way of life. The legendary French president Charles de Gaulle, a man who saw through the illusions of global power, finally called the bluff. He ordered his navy to transport millions of paper dollars across the Atlantic, demanding that the American government honor its promise and exchange those dollars for physical gold at the fixed rate of $35 an ounce. It was a masterstroke of geopolitical defiance. One by one, other nations began to realize that the American vault was being emptied. A run on the bank was occurring on a global scale. The United States was on the verge of the greatest bankruptcy in the history of the world. Then came the fateful night of August 15, 1971. Most Americans were at home watching television, completely unaware that their world was about to change forever. President Richard Nixon walked onto the national stage and, with a few carefully chosen words, effectively severed the last tether between the dollar and the physical reality of gold. He didn't just end a policy, he ended the era of honest money. He declared that the dollar would no longer be convertible into gold. It was labeled as a temporary measure, but it was, in truth, the birth of the modern fiat regime. In that moment, the dollar ceased to be a claim on wealth and became a claim on debt. It ceased to be an anchor and became a sail, blowing wherever the whims of central bankers took it. We have now spent over 50 years in this brave new world, and the results are finally becoming clear to everyone with eyes to see. When money is backed by nothing, there is no limit to how much a government can borrow. We have moved from a society of producers to a society of debtors. Look at the national debt of the United States today in 2026. It is a number so large it loses all meaning. It is a monument to the failure of the fiat system. Every time the government issues new bonds to cover its interest payments, it is effectively printing more money, which dilutes the value of every dollar you have in your pocket, your savings account, and your pension. This is the hidden tax that nobody votes on. It is the reason why your grocery bill rises, why housing has become a luxury item, and why the dream of early retirement has become a nightmare of endless, grinding labor. Think about the psychological impact of this. For 5 millennia, humans viewed gold as the ultimate insurance policy. It was the God's money. When you saved gold, you were preserving your future. When you moved to fiat, you were forced to abandon that safety. You were forced to become a gambler. You had to move your money into the stock market, into real estate, into anything that would rise in value faster than the government could print currency. This has created a culture of perpetual anxiety. We are all living on the edge, chasing yields, terrified that if we stop moving, the system will swallow us whole. We have been conditioned to believe that money is just numbers on a screen. But what happens when those numbers lose their meaning? What happens when the world decides it has had enough of the American printing press? We are currently witnessing the most significant shift in global power since 1971. The nations of the world, particularly the BRICS bloc, have seen the weaponization of the dollar. They watched as the American government seized the reserves of sovereign nations, and they realized that they were no longer dealing with a neutral global currency, but a political tool. The message sent to the rest of the world was clear. If you don't play by our rules, we will turn off your access to the global financial system. This was the moment the fiat house of cards began to wobble. Nations that were once loyal allies are now quietly, methodically, and rapidly accumulating physical gold. They are not doing this for fun, they are doing this for survival. They are building a new, multipolar world, and they want no part of a system that can be printed into oblivion. Look at the data coming out of China, India, and across the Middle East. Central banks are purchasing gold at historic, record-breaking rates. They are repatriating their gold reserves, pulling them from London and New York, and moving them into their own national vaults. They are creating their own clearing systems, bypassing the dollar entirely. This is not just a trend, it is a fundamental shift in the tectonic plates of the global economy. The dollar's status as the world's reserve currency is not a divine right. It is a privilege that was granted based on trust, and that trust has been shattered. When you look at the price of gold in 2026, don't just see a commodity price. See a barometer of global panic. See the collective wisdom of nations that are protecting themselves against the inevitable collapse of the fiat experiment. The mainstream media will tell you that the economy is fine, that inflation is under control, and that you should just keep working, keep borrowing, and keep trusting the system. They are the high priests of the fiat religion. They depend on your continued belief in the illusion. But look at the reality of your own life. Look at the prices. Look at the debt. Look at the anxiety that you see in the faces of the people around you. There is a deep, instinctual feeling that something is fundamentally broken, and that feeling is the truth. The system was designed to benefit the few who are closest to the printing press, at the expense of the many who work for their living. This is the Cantillon effect in motion. The rich get richer because they receive the new, undevalued money first, while you receive it last, after the prices have already gone up. You have been told that you are powerless, that this is a system too big for you to understand, let alone influence. That is a lie. The greatest power you have is your awareness. By understanding the history of the gold standard, by understanding why the dollar was detached from reality, and by understanding how the current system works against your interests, you reclaim your agency. You are no longer a passive participant in the machine, you are an observer who can protect what you have built. You can make decisions that prioritize long-term stability over short-term consumption. You can look at assets that have stood the test of 5,000 years of human history, assets that cannot be inflated away, cannot be seized by an algorithm, and do not rely on the empty promises of a politician. We are standing at the threshold of a new era. The transition will not be easy. A system that has been built on the illusion of endless debt cannot disappear without friction. There will be moments of market volatility, there will be political upheaval, and there will be times when the world feels like it is spinning off its axis. But this is the price of returning to reality. You cannot build a sustainable future on a foundation of lies. The world is being forced, kicking and screaming, to return to the basics of value, scarcity, and trust. The gold rush that we are seeing among central banks is the prologue to the next chapter of human economic history. They know what is coming. They are positioning themselves for a world where the dollar is just one of many currencies, a world where hard assets regain their throne as the ultimate store of human energy and time. Ask yourself, if you had the chance to step off the hamster wheel, would you take it? If you had the chance to store your hard-earned labor in something that is not controlled by a central bank, would you? The path forward requires courage. It requires questioning everything you have been told by the establishment. It requires looking at the history books, looking at the charts, and realizing that the people who control your money are not as smart as they would like you to believe. They are human, just like you, but they are driven by the fear of losing their power. And their power comes from your silence. Their power comes from your acceptance of the status quo. When you start to question, when you start to protect your own family, when you start to value your time above their paper promises, the system loses its grip on you. Think about the millions of people who have been crushed by this system in the last 50 years. Think about the dreams that were deferred, the retirements that were lost, and the lives that were spent working for money that was actively being destroyed. We are the generation that has to bear the burden of this transition, but we are also the generation that has the tools to see it for what it is. We have information at our fingertips that our parents could never dream of. We can track the gold flows of central banks in real time. We can analyze the debt to GDP ratios of failing nations. We can see the cracks in the dam before it bursts. This is not about fear-mongering. This is about being a realist in an age of deception. It is about taking back the sovereignty that is rightfully yours. Your time is your most precious resource. You trade your life, minute by minute, for money. When that money is devalued, your life is being stolen. Do not let them steal it. Protect the fruits of your labor. Value what is real. Look past the flashing lights of the financial news networks and focus on the bedrock of reality. The transition from gold to fiat was the greatest theft in history, and the transition back, or at least away from the illusion, will be the most important story of our time. You are the protagonist in this story. The decisions you make today will determine your freedom tomorrow. Keep your eyes on the truth. The world is changing, and it is changing in ways that the traditional institutions are desperate to hide from you. They want you to keep playing the game, even as they change the rules to ensure they always win. But you don't have to play. You can choose to opt for stability. You can choose to understand the mechanics of the game. You can choose to be a master of your own financial destiny. This is what we do here at Aurex. We peel back the layers of the onion. We look at the data that the headlines ignore. We connect the dots that the talking heads refuse to touch. We are here to navigate this storm together, and I promise you, as long as you keep seeking the truth, you will always be one step ahead of the curve. Stay vigilant, because the next few years will be defined by the collision of these two worlds, the dying world of fiat and the rising world of hard reality. Every major economic crisis in the past has led to a fundamental restructuring of how we define wealth. We are currently in the middle of that restructuring. Don't be the one caught holding the bag when the music finally stops. Be the one who saw it coming, who prepared, and who stood firm while others were blinded by the propaganda. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to your family, and you owe it to the future you are building. This is the real market update. This is the information they do not want you to have. This is the story of our lives, and we are going to tell it until the whole world hears. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for having the courage to challenge the narrative. Your support is what keeps the light on in the dark, and I am honored to be on this journey with you. We are not just viewers of history, we are witnesses to the greatest shift in modern memory, and together, we will see it through. Protect your time, protect your labor, and most importantly, stay informed. The fiat era is coming to a close, and a new chapter is beginning, one where reality once again takes its place at the center of the financial world. Are you ready for what comes next? Because the movement of gold, the shifting of global alliances, and the breakdown of the dollar are not just headlines, they are the blueprints for your future. Keep watching, stay engaged, and never stop questioning the system. This is John A.G., signing off from Aurex, reminding you that in a world of illusions, the truth is the only real asset you have.